Morning, everyone. This is Sarah with Harrisburg Project, and today we are going to go over the orphanage claim in iStar. So this is going to be for regular term orphanage, fund codes D, E, and F. If you have not attended a training with us before, you can ask questions in the questions pod as we go throughout the training. On top of that, you can also get your handout for today. It's going to be in your GoToWebinar menu. If you cannot see your GoToWebinar menu, look for an orange arrow, click on that, and it will expand and open up some menu options for you. So under handouts, you will see the PDF for today. It's also going to be on our website afterwards, as well as the recording of this session. So if you have to step away today, know that you can come back and review that session. If you were with me last week or were not for all claims, that's available on our website as well under Hot Topics. So we have a lot to talk about for orphanage. Even though we're not talking about all claims, this is still a lengthy process if we go through the program method for your district. So we will be here for a minute again today. So next time will be much shorter. All claims, of course, took over 2 hours. This one will take a little while as well, but hopefully not that long. So again, if you have questions, please ask them in the questions pod. I will answer them as we go through the session, unless it is very specific to your district or co-op. Sometimes if it is something very specific, you may just want to call or email afterwards, and we'll go through that together. In addition, if you feel like you need individual help with your claims this year, please go to our website. In the top left-hand corner under Hot Topics, you will see a link that says want customized training. Click on that, fill out the form, tell me what you need with the check boxes, and I will contact you to set up some times to go through some training on your end, district-specific training or co-op-specific training, looking at your data and seeing what kind of plan we need to make for the summer. So if you're interested in that, please go ahead and fill that out. I will let you know that I am filling up quickly. So the rest of May is pretty much booked solid. I could probably squeeze some people in still, but mostly we're probably looking at June at this point. So, but I will try, and if I have cancellations, of course, I will call you to see if we can fill you in there in a cancellation slot. So, okay, so we've got handouts if you need to ask questions. Also on the questions, if you think I'm not going to answer it, I may be waiting till we get to that part of the training. So just be patient. I kind of will move back and forth through the questions to see, you know, at what point in the PowerPoint are we going to get to that subject. So I'm not ignoring you. All right. So we're going to talk about the due dates. So pickup, snapshot, due date, whatever you want to call it. When do you have to have this done? We're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you how you can identify your youth and care students in iStar, so your orphanage students. I'll also talk about which ones you can add at this point. We'll go through the 3 different methods of computing days. So what does that mean? So there are 3 different ways that you can send your claim data to ISB. iStar gives you a manual method, a calendar method, or a program method. The main difference is that for manual and calendar, you know the cost. So you're getting an invoice, somebody's calculated the dollar amount for you. You know that I need to tell ISB that I spent X amount of dollars on this child this year. So again, you know the dollar amount. With the program method, you don't know the dollar amount, and we need to figure it out. What did it cost your district to educate this child this year? So that's where we will spend most of our time today, going through the process of how do you determine this based on the forms and the rules that ISB has published. So that's the program method. All right, so then we'll look at calculating the claim, the reports that you have available, and of course, how you can get a hold of us if you need help. Okay, so this year, the deadline for Fund Code D, E, and F regular term orphanage records is going to be June 14th. So some of you are used to the 15th. That falls on a Saturday this year. So anytime a statutory due date is on a Saturday, It will be due the Friday before. So June 14th is the due date this year. What does that mean? That means that after June 14th, you can no longer add an approval record, hence a claim, for fund codes D, E, and F regular term. So if you don't have them added by that date, then you're not going to be able to put them into iStar, which means you will not be able to claim them. All right. So in addition, when we're talking about these funds D, E, and F kids for regular term, some of you may be aware that we just had a due date of May 1st, where you had to have the approvals in for any kids that had a begin date of March 1st or before. That still stands. So if their begin date, if you discover these kids, you miss them, and their begin date was before March 2nd, you're not going to be able to put them into iStar. So at this point, the only ones that you can add for funds D, E, and F are going to be kids that have a begin date of March 2nd or after. Okay? So keep that in mind. For summer term, these are going to be due on November 1st this year. So we're only talking about regular term during this session. We will have trainings on summer term as we get closer to November. Now, even though we have the due date of June 14th for additions, you will be able to work on Fund D, E, and F regular term student approvals. So you'll have a correction period on the approvals through June 30th. And you will have a correction period on the claims through July 31st. This is how it has been for several years now, so no changes this year. It's just that it's due on the 14th instead of the 15th. Okay, so no adds after the 14th. If you are able to have your claims truly finished on June 14th, that is fabulous, but we are not that naive. We know that this takes a lot of time, and we don't have per caps yet. So all of those things set you behind, which sometimes causes you to have to utilize that correction period for the claims changes, okay? So you can work on the claims through July 31st if you need to, but you have to make sure that those approval records are added. The only way a claim record exists is if there is an approval record for Fund D, E, and F regular term. So remember that. All right, so who are orphans? Well, they're called Youth in Care, and there is a tab in iStar. Let's see, I got a question. Re-ask me that. I don't know. I think you got a typo, and I don't know what you're asking me. Okay, I'll check back in a minute. All right, so how do you identify these kids? Well, one way is to look into iStar. When you're under approvals and claims and student approvals, there's a possible Youth in Care tab. When you look at this tab, of course, you're going to be looking under your district for this current school year. And what you will see is that in the very last column of this graph, there will be a fund code column. And what you are looking for there is going to be students that show up in this list that either don't have an iStar record, or they have an iStar record and maybe the fund code is not appropriate. So what do you do with this? Well, first of all, you have to realize there are all students in your district that are possible Youth in Care kids. So that means that you may see some regular ed kids. So under those circumstances, what do you do with the regular ed kids? Just ignore them. But if you see special ed kids here that don't have a fund code, that means they're not an iStar at all, and you need to add an approval record for them. In addition, if you see fund code of A in this listing or X, that there's a possibility that those students are Youth in Care and that you need to change their fund code to E, as in Edward. If you change the fund code to E and you get eligibility errors, don't change it back to A until you check with us. We can tell you if they qualify, and maybe there's a discrepancy between what's in SIS that's fed into iStar, so maybe there's a name difference or something like that between what's on file at DCFS. Okay, so it may be the same child. It takes an actual person. Artificial intelligence cannot do everything, so it takes an actual person to look and see, Is this the same child? And then does it warrant ISB doing an override so you can make the claim? If you have kids here who are a B as in boy, possibly need to be changed to an F as in Frank. If you change it again and get eligibility errors, let us know first. So you send us the SysIDs at support and let us know that you need a youth and care check. All right. All right. Is there a tentative date for per caps to come up? Yes, tomorrow. Supposed to be in there tomorrow. I saw them yesterday. I saw the file, so we're supposed to have them tomorrow. So we will of course let you know Monday in the news briefing, but if you see them in there sooner, or if you get the announcement from Andy Crouppen at ISB, he's the funding and disbursements director. So if any of those things happen, then it's happened. They're there. Okay. All right. So once you identify who your orphans are, you get them changed in iStar, you know who you need to be working with. Then you're going to decide, okay, what do I need to do to make my claim? I need to tell ISB how much money I spent to educate this child this year for their tuition and any individual expenses. So I need to tell them that because they're going to give 100% reimbursement back for whatever your expenses are on the child. So you need to think, well, okay, this child goes to, who am I going to pick on? I'm going to pick on CEDAW. This child goes to a program at CEDAW Co-op and they send me a bill. That's great. That's going to make a determination as to whether you would use a manual or calendar method instead of program. Why? Because you know that CEDAW is going to charge X number of dollars for this child's education, and they're going to give you an invoice telling you that. So you know I need to claim X number of dollars in iStar for reimbursement because CEDAW gave me an invoice and I know what that dollar amount should be. Okay. All right, one more on per caps. How do you get the per caps? They're loaded into iStar automatically, so you don't have to do anything. Now, ISB will send out a memo that will give you a link to the actual spreadsheet, and we'll have that on our website. And you'll be able to access it, but since it all loads into iStar automatically, you don't necessarily have to ever open that spreadsheet. So that would just be for your own purposes if you wanted to look at it. So they'll send out an announcement. It's a real brief memo with the link telling you it's available, and then they load them into iStar automatically. That would probably have already happened by the time you get the memo. And then hopefully all of this is taken care of by Monday, and we of course will then announce it. But as far as inside iStar goes, it's automatic. They automatically populate. So you don't have to do anything. One less thing. Okay, so with that, we're going to talk about the manual method, the calendar method, the program method, why you should use them, what's the difference. And as I said before, we'll spend a lot of time on program method going through the steps to figure out the cost to educate a child if you don't know it. Okay, so manual and calendar are very similar. Both methods, again, you're going to have a dollar amount that you need to enter into iStar. So somebody has said for X program, it costs $50,000. Okay, here's your invoice. So you know that with manual and calendar method, neither one of these methods are going to calculate any dollar amounts and tell you anything about costs. You're supplying that data to iStar. Now, what's the difference between the two? Well, the main difference is that with a manual method, it is just that. You're going to type everything in. You're going to type in your days and you're going to type in your costs. Now with calendar method, if you're able to tap into a calendar, then the days will fill in automatically for you, but you still type in the dollar amount. That's the only difference between manual and calendar method, is that we can look at a public calendar. iStar will peek over there at those calendars that are submitted by districts and some co-ops. All districts have to submit. Co-ops can, but they don't have to. So if there's a calendar available, it just saves you a step. You're going to say, I'm going to use calendar method, and I'm going to, I've got this bill from Harrisburg School District, and I'm going to use their calendar, and I'm going to plug in this dollar amount, and I'm going to be done. All right. So are you receiving a bill from another public district? If yes, you can use manual or calendar. Are you receiving a bill from a special ed co-op that has an official calendar? If yes, of course you can use manual, but then you can also use calendar if they have an official calendar on file. All right. And then private facility, we're not talking about today, but just know for private facility, it's always calendar method. So all private facilities have to submit electronic calendars. That was not always the case. We have not had these for very long. They are wonderful. You do not have to count days on your calendars anymore from these public or private facilities to see how many days to claim if it wasn't a full year. So we have those for private and only calendar. Okay, so mainly what you're looking at is if I have a dollar amount that I need to claim and I know what that dollar amount is, can I also utilize a calendar for a co-op or another public district? If you can, then you can use the calendar method. You don't have to type in days enrolled and days in session manually. That's the main difference between the two. But for both, you have to know the dollar amount that you need to claim to ISB. Okay? All right, I don't have any questions, so I'm hoping that I'm being clear enough. All right, so an example of manual method. So on manual, you can use this for Fund E, of course, if you need to. So you've got a bill, you don't know the calendar, you know the days, you're just going to type it all in and be done with this. So you'll have manual method on your claim record. For those of you who don't know where I'm at, I know that we spend a ton of time working on approval records throughout the school year. But when you're looking at your approvals tab, right next to it is the claims tab. That is where you need to be in order to make a claim to ISB. So the approvals are very important, but for some of those approvals, a claim goes hand in hand. So if you have Fund E records, it creates a claim automatically. So you need to step over to the claims tab. That's where I'm at. All right, so for this student, it's manual method. Verify that the FTE is entered. We've got 1.0. They will almost always be 1.0. If you have any questions about whether it should be less, please ask us first before you lower it because it will change your claim. So we don't want to change your claim amount. Type in your days enrolled, type in your days in session, and you're going to be taking the cost per 1.0 ADE. So hopefully when you get an invoice from, say, a cooperative, they are telling you that this program costs X amount of dollars for a full year. So they're going to say, if a child were here in our program every day, all year, the maximum amount, this is what the cost would be. So that's what you're going to enter. Okay. You can see what happens. Your cost per pupil, that's your actual claim amount. The cost per pupil is what you are wanting to tell ISB, this is my claim. All right, so cost per 1.0 ADE, that's going to be for the full time. Okay. Now the system is smart enough that it knows to look to see were they there less. So if they were there less, the cost per pupil would decrease automatically. So that child, say they were only there 150 of 174. So when the ADE up here is calculated, it's days enrolled divided by days in session. And so that ADE will tell, when you look at it, if it's not a 1.0, you'll know the child was not in this program all year long. It was less than the maximum 174. Okay, so it's smart enough to do some math here. So what you need to be supplying, again, for manual method is what it would cost for the whole year for a child. And most of the time, when I help districts and talk to them, this is what you would be supplied with, is the full year cost. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to talk about calendar method because there are two different methods for calendar. The same idea behind each of them as far as you need to have the dollar amount, they need to have a public calendar on file. Okay, so those two things still apply. But sometimes we have kids who will, let me think, the best example, I guess, would be pre-K programs. So sometimes your pre-K kids may start school later than the rest of the population. And that is by design. They, just are intended to come a little bit later than the rest of the kids. However, they're still entitled to the full cost of the program for them. So, if they're in a program every day, even though that program starts a little bit later than the rest of the kids, it doesn't mean that we should lower their ADE and then, of course, lower their claim amount. So even if the rest of the district is 174 days and pre-K is 170, if it costs, let's say, $20,000 for a child in that program the whole year, we're going off of 170 days worth. It doesn't matter that they could have gone 174. The cost is the cost. Okay, so we run into this specifically with pre-K, but I'm sure it could happen under other circumstances. So, we have to go by what SIS puts in for begin and end dates. And so that's where this problem is created in iStar, to where we have to follow what they are using. So the definition of a begin date in SIS is the date that the student is expected to attend. So with those pre-K kids, they're not expected to attend the first pupil attendance day. They're expected to attend, in our example, 4 days later. So their begin date would be 4 days later than everyone else. We only have one public calendar. So what iStar is looking at is that one public calendar. It's expecting 4 more days for these kids to be full-time all year, okay? So we saw a lot of instances where with our calendar method that we would have issues at the bottom here whenever people would put in the claim, because maybe they would get a bill that told the cost per 1.0 ADE, but the days would be less because of the calendar. Well, we don't want that to happen, okay? So you can see here in just standard calendar method, if the costs were $25,000 and the kids there all year long, there's no problem. We've already looked at that, okay? But if under a traditional calendar method like we just looked at, the child started, in this case, 5 days later, let's pretend that this is one of those pre-K kids and they fall into that decreased calendar. Well, we know that for pre-K, 169 days is the maximum that they could go, because they start 5 days later than the rest of the population. But we only have one calendar to go by, remember? So to iStar, it looks like they were there less than the maximum time. So the ADE deflates. So what happens to our claim? Well, they tell you it costs $25,000 at 169 days. You type in 25,000, look what happens to your claim. We don't want that to happen. We want it to stay at 25,000. So you have 2 options under these circumstances. One is you would inflate your cost per 1.0 ADE to make the math work correctly, okay? So the 25,000 is multiplying by the ADE and then the FTE. So it deflates the amount. So if you take 25,000 and divide by the 0.971, it's going to give you a higher number that you can put into the cost here. So it would be more than 25,000, but then once it did the math, it would make your 25,000 come in cost per pupil. So your claim would still be correct. Or the easier option is change your button to calendar cost and just type in your cost per pupil. Then nothing will change it, okay? So either one, but again, watch these ADEs. They do affect your days, which affects your claim. That's why I always say, since this calculation is cost per 1.0 ADE times ADE times FTE, that the FTE is less than 1, you're going to have trouble too. So always ask us before you deflate your FTE as well. Okay? So any questions on that before I move on? So just remember, I just want to reiterate, these 2 methods we've already gone over. For today's purposes, you of course have to have orphans, okay? But then you have to decide if you are going to be able to get the dollar amounts for the costs or if you have to determine them. So the two methods we've gone over so far are going to be used when you know the dollar amount that you need to claim. Okay. I don't have any questions. Hopefully that's clear. Next, we're going to start the program method. This is what you can use in iStar if you do not know the dollar amount to claim and you have to figure out what that dollar amount is. Most often, these are going to be kids that are in your district being served in one of your district schools. Okay? So the first thing that I do in individual trainings when I work with you with your data is I will pull up all of your Fund Code E students in your district and I will look at their approval records. I don't even open the approval records. I can just look at your search results and go through, and a couple things I will look at first. The first thing I will look at is their percent special ed, and then I look at their disability. Many times I will see speech-only students. Speech-only students do not need to have a program, okay? If you look on our website, under claims, at the bottom, there are links to speech-only calculations for pre-K students or K through 12 students. So if you have speech-only students, I would go get those worksheets and follow those, and that's how you'll make your claim. You will put them in as manual or calendar using that calculation that we've given. Okay, there's an example. It shows you exactly what to do. You can't do it until per caps are out. Okay. The next thing that I look at is going to be for other students that maybe they don't have a very large percent special ed and they weren't at your district for very long. So say they were only there for a month or two and they were only like 20% special ed. For those kids, it's not going to be worth a program either. You're going to spend more time doing this and getting about the same amount or maybe even less than you would for just using your per cap. So sometimes you can just look at those and say, well, it's not going to work out to be worth this, and I'm just going to use manual or calendar method and plug in my per cap amount. Again, you can't do that till you know your per cap, so hopefully we see those tomorrow. So I don't want you to think that every single student that doesn't fall under manual or calendar has to have a program. That's not always the case. Of course, I'm hesitant. I normally don't talk about this because I'm hesitant to do that because I have a lot of people who will say, well, I don't want to do this and I'm just going to do per cap. That's not okay either. So if you have a kid that is 80% special ed, he's in your district all year long, you're doing a program, okay? We don't want to lose money for the district. All right, so the location, I'll show the speech only location at the end, but it's on our website in the bottom section under claims at the very bottom. So that's where we have all our recorded trainings from last year. It's at the very bottom down there. All right, so the key components of the claim, regardless of whether you use iStar or Excel or pencil and paper, you're going to go through at least 4 of these steps to get your ed cost per 1.0 ADE. So that's our goal. We want to find out, what did it cost to educate a student in this program all year long? What program are we talking about? The one that you're going to create around your orphan or orphanage students. Okay, so we're going to fill out a 5066A. To fill that out, we're going to use a lot of things, but 2 of those things are going to be the student documentation sheet, the personnel documentation sheet, and then our product will be the 5066C. This is our goal. This is the end result. The 5066D is a depreciation schedule if you have bought any equipment for this program that's over $5,000. I have never helped anyone use the 5066D, so I don't know if anybody has equipment like that they purchase over $5,000 just for that program. So, all right, so how do you decide? if you're going to do program method? Well, a couple things I've already said. Of course, do you have any Fund Code E student approvals? If yes, you can use the program method if you need to. Do you have any tuition bills to create? This is another option always with the program method. If you need to create tuition bills, you can kind of, be doing a claim and create a tuition bill at the same time and not even realize it. So if you need to create invoices, you can do that as well. So those would be invoices you're sending to other resident districts so they can make their claim. Okay. So program method of computing days, it generates the 5066 A, B, and C reports. The calculations are done inside iStar. So once we get done creating our program, it will go out and calculate the claim for you automatically. So you're not going to be typing dollar amounts in on the program method. Again, all those fields will autofill. And then the big thing is that all your reports and your programs will be saved. So down the road, you can come back and look at your archives. So if you have a audit or something like that, or you just need to go back and look or pull some data for someone, that will be all will be archived in previous school years. So I've talked a lot about the program method. So what do we look at as a program? How do we define a program when we're talking about making the claim? It may be easier for you to think about this as a cost center. So you may have a lot of programs in your district, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to correlate to the same definition that we are using. So if you have a huge program and oh, all these kids are a part of this big program in our district, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the program definition that we're going to use in iStar. Probably is going to have more kids and more teachers than what we actually need. So what do you do first? How do you get started? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to make a list of your orphans. So who are your Fund Code E kids? We're going to look at the ones specifically that you need to create a program for. So we don't know their costs. We can't do a claim on them, manual or calendar, because we don't know what to put in for them. We have to figure it out. So these are the kids you're making the list of. Then you look at that list of kids and you take all of their teachers that provide instruction and put them next to them on that list. Also, if those teachers have any program pairs with them, we need to know who they are as well. So you're going to have a list that has, you're going to have your first column is going to be the kids, your second column is going to be the teachers that provide instruction. I'm not talking about related service providers. We don't want psych, social workers, etc. I just mean their actual teachers. And then again, any program pairs that are with those teachers that help them. Not individual aides, just program aides. Okay. Then you would look to see, is there any correlation between these kids, these teachers? Do they have any of the same relationships? So if you have multiple orphanage students and they share a teacher, then we're going to put them together. That's going to be our program. Okay. If you have 5 orphans and they don't have anything in common, then we're going to have 5 programs. So that's how you define your programs. All right. So, and yes, just special ed teachers, not general ed teachers. All right. And I'll get to some things you can't do here in a couple of slides as well when it comes to the gen ed population. So yes, just their special ed teachers that are providing instruction to them. All right. So what we're doing is we're going to be taking all these costs. So for those teachers and those program aides, you need their salaries as well. So you're going to get their gross salary, and then you need to ask your business manager within that salary, is it all paid locally or is it paid partially with local funds, partially with federal funds? You need to know how it's paid. All right. So their gross salary. So you're going to need that. So what we're doing is we are adding up instructional services. We're also going to put in supportive services, supplies, materials, physical plan adjustments, all the special education costs that we can find, some regular ed costs because they are in public buildings, they're in public schools. This is our whole goal. We're going to add up all these costs and we're going to determine with all the costs for a district, what does it cost to educate the program we're talking about? So these kids that we're putting together, they have to have common educational needs. We You know, what I don't want to see is a really large district with one orphan or two orphans in a program that is created around an entire district. They don't have common educational needs. We don't put them all together, okay? So that does become more difficult, I know, as you know, we get to high school districts where these kids, they are together, they're seeing different teachers. You know, you may have larger programs under those circumstances. If, on the other hand, if you're a very small elementary district, you may only have a handful of special ed teachers. So yeah, your programs may have kids that are in different grade levels and things like that. But for the most part, they just need to have something in common. And what we don't want to see is that we come in and we look and we see, why are these teachers added? They never even see this orphan. This teacher has nothing to do with this orphan. Why are they on this program? Because then it's going to look like you're trying to inflate the program and make it higher than what it actually needs to be, because of course you get 100% back. So you might want to get a little tricky. All right, so the whole thing here is we're trying to determine what the cost is to educate one child in this program. Creating this program, again, you need to make sure you're thinking about these, that you have common ed needs with these kids, and that you're gathering the data that you need. So what do I not want to see? I already talked about district-wide programs. Very, very rarely would I say that's okay. Blended classrooms, you cannot claim as programs. So if you have blended pre-Ks, you're not going to do a program around them. If they're co-taught, you can. So in other words, if there's one special ed teacher in the room and she's teaching special ed and regular ed kids at the same time, that's what we call blended. You cannot do a program around that. But if there are two teachers in the room and it's a co-taught classroom, then you can do the program, okay? So we can't cost out tuition when these kids are spending time with the regular population with one teacher. All right. Early childhood students, you're never going to put in with kindergarten and 12th graders, or kindergarten through 12th grade. The calculation's totally different. It's just a whole different idea as far as funding and the time that they spend with the regular ed population. So we typically never want to see that as well. So just up front on that. Now, if you have kids that are in a blended program, but maybe they have some related services, I can help you cost those out. We can still make a claim, but we're not going to be able to claim their tuition, not their instruction, okay? So they don't need a program, but that doesn't mean we can't calculate some of their related service costs and do a manual or calendar method claim for them and get a little bit of something. All right, so look at those kids that are blended, see if they have any related services. You can send me an email or give me a call. We can look at those and see, you know, if we can go ahead and cost them out. All right, so your to-do list, how do we get started? Well, first of all, you need to create your programs. If you have programs from last year and you can reuse those, then that's great, go ahead. If you need to do a mix, you need to reuse some, delete some, add some new ones. Evaluate what you need to do. How are you going to know? Based on the list you created. Who are your students? How many programs do you need? What are those programs going to be? What staff are they revolving around? Per caps will be released by ISBE hopefully tomorrow, so we will have those. We're going to verify that we have the salary data entered for the people that are providing instruction in those program paras. We're going to add those personnel records to the program that we've created. So again, instruction and program paras only. Then we're going to look at the student claim record, make sure that if there are any individual costs for this child that we have them entered. Then we'll add the student records to the program. So who are these kids? Well, we've talked about you're going to have a list. The first column is going to have all of your orphans. The second column, you're going to kind of decide, draw lines. These kids are with these teachers. That determines how many programs you need. But in addition, for the teachers, you're going to have a third column, and that's going to be their class list. So we need to know not just the orphan, but we also need to know all the other kids in iStar that they teach. So it's probably going to be a bunch of Fun Code A kids, okay? So we need that list. So we need the orphans, the teachers and program paras with their salaries, gross salaries, and then we need to know the class list for those teachers. Okay, so this is a good question at this point. If you have homebound or hospital instruction bills for Fund eKids, are you doing a program as well? Okay. So if you have, so they're in a co-op program. So you're going to have a co-op invoice and then you're going to have these on top. So what you're probably going to have to do is add them together, and then you can use a manual, or you'll have to use manual probably. Okay. Watch that number though. Make sure it comes out right. And if you need help, call me. We want to make sure that it adds in everything properly. I think it will be fine as long as they were full year. So just watch that too if you need to do some math and inflate it. Okay. After we add in the student records to the program, so our third column, we have to add the whole list in plus our orphan. Then we're going to recalculate the days of those kids on our S5066B form. I'll show you how to do that. We need to make sure we do that first, because then we're going to start completing our cost sheet. We're going to start with the 5066A. Once we're done with that, we'll recalculate the program, and then you'll be able to look at your reports. Okay? Some of those things you don't have to do in the order I have listed. It's just what makes sense to me. It doesn't mean it will to you. Some of these things you may already have completed. So sometimes you know throughout the school year what program kids are going to be in, and as you're doing data entry, you go ahead and put them in the program. All right. So how do we create a program? Well, we're going to make one from scratch. It doesn't mean you won't already have programs there. And again, you can reuse programs. Since this is a new year, everything's archived in last year. Even if it rolled over, you're not making changes in last year, you're making changes this year. So you're not going to hurt previous year claims. So we're under approvals and claims, student and program definition. We're going to click add to create the new program. At the top, of course, this year's your school year. Term will always be regular. Program name you're going to type in. This, you will see this again, it will print on reports, so make sure it makes sense that it's, it applies. Preparing district will be, of course, your district, and then you would want to use your calendar. Once you do that, it will fill in the begin and end date for the calendar. So if this looks odd to you and you know it's not right, you need to talk to your superintendent and ask them to go ahead and amend and mark their calendar final for the school year. They may not be able to mark it final until the last day of school, but that needs to happen. And then you will come back to your program once they do that and hit reload calendar, and it will put in the appropriate days. So if you had emergency days and you used them this year and you can tell they're not being reflected yet and that end date isn't correct, then that's what needs to happen. So again, your superintendent's the only one I believe that can take care of that with their iWAS account. So it's the calendar application is an iWAS application. It's just another program like iStar. So they need to go in and take care of that. And that's something they're going to get a reminder on, I believe, this week. I think that I was in a meeting yesterday, and I think they said that this week the calendar division was going to send out some reminders on that. So next, what per cap do you want to use to help calculate the claim? If you are just creating an invoice and you're not sending these records in to ISB for reimbursement, you'll use preparing district, because you're creating a bill based on services your district provided. You want to bill based on your district. Other would only be used before per caps come out if you want to, you have everything done in your program and you want to run a projection or have an idea. If you select other, it will let you type a number in. But almost all the time, probably 99.9% of the time, we're talking resident district. Okay, so if you're making a claim on behalf of your own district, then you want resident district selected. Next, contact information. If someone needs to call about that program, who do they need to call? Number 6 is for co-ops only. If you create programs and you want your districts that work in iStar to be able to select your program that you've created in the drop downs, then you will check the box and they can do that. Most of you will just skip that step. Next, you're going to click Save, and you will have your program created. So next, like I said, you don't have to do this in this order. This is just the way it makes sense to me. Next, we would be moving down the program definition form, and the personnel salary information is going to be the next step. So what you will do is make sure, of course, that these personnel are entered into iStar. You're going to go under approvals and claims. Instead of student, you're going to personnel and approvals. And then you're going to search for column 2, your teachers and your paras, program paras that are in your list as providing instruction to your orphanage students. Those are the people you want to find in your personnel approvals data. Once you find them, you'll open up their approval record, and down at the bottom, you're going to see a button that says Show Salary Info. It's on the left-hand side, and it's going to be underneath your required data. Okay, and we hide this because it's not required data for the approvals. It has nothing to do with the personnel collection. We will only be entering salary information for teachers and paras that are attached to a program for claims. If you have 50 staff members and 5 of them are instructors that are involved in programs, we're only doing this for 5 people, not 50. Okay, you'll be wasting your time. No one's going to see it, and it has no purpose with our personnel collection. All right, we're just doing this to help us, to benefit us on our program. So what do you need to do? You need to put in the local salary. If any of their salary is federal or other, then you will put it in the appropriate fields, and it will total up those 3 fields. All right, good question. I have 3 FundCode E students. Do I need to create a program for each of them? Well, of course, we would first evaluate whether you need a program at all. So we would look at the time they're there in the year, their percent special ed, their related services, are they speech only? We would look at all those things. And then we would say, okay, well, and that's knowing that you don't have the cost either. So we would have already ruled out manual or calendar method. So we would look at those things. After that, once we decide, yes, you need the program, then we would look at your orphanage students and say, do they have anything in common? Do they share any instructors? So that is how you determine whether you would have 1, 2, or 3 programs for 3 FundE kids. You could have 3 separate programs if they don't have any teachers in common. Okay? And I can help you with that. We may already have a training. I don't remember, but if we don't, I can help you. All right, the last field is evidence-based funding for personnel. So personnel does not have a claim. You do not send in personnel and tell how long they worked to get money back. You do that for reporting purposes for the federal government, but we don't have an actual claim anymore. We haven't had a claim since the 15-16 school year, so it's been a long time. Instead, through evidence-based funding, your district gets a set dollar amount back every single year. It hasn't changed. So you get a set amount of money. It's called the base funding minimum. So we know that whenever we put this salary in, that we do have to say, okay, this salary is $50,000 from local funds. But we know that you are getting some reimbursement, okay, because you get that base funding minimum every year. So how do we know how much you're getting per se? Well, the base funding minimum was set from the 15-16 school year claim. And so that claim was based on getting $9,000 back per teacher and $3,500 back for paras. So we know that we have to back out some money here. We know that you're getting reimbursement. Okay, you're getting a little bit of money. So the easiest route is for teachers, you put in 9,000, for paras, you type in 3,500. However, if you want us to investigate and see if we can put in less, then we can calculate your EBF offset. We can see if you have a proration because your staff has increased. So what do I mean by all that? So the amount that you get back per year is based on, again, the staff you had in the 15-16 school year and what you got back that year. Chances are your staff's probably increased by then. Not in all circumstances, but most of the ones I see, yes. So if your staff has increased, yet you're still getting this same base funding minimum back, then it stands to reason that you're not really getting $9,000 and $3,500 back per person. It's going to be less than that now because your staff increased. If you want us to calculate that and check into it for you, let us know, or we can send you the documents on how you can do it yourself, the steps. But we can see, can we come up with a proration and put in less than $9,000 and $3,500 here for the offset? That's a benefit to you, okay? So let us know if you want us to look at that. If we've done this in the past for you, if we did this last year for you, it has to be done again. It's going to be different every year. So what is the first requirement? You have to have all your personnel done for this year. We can't run the proration until you've completed your personnel approvals for this school year. All right, I have a para that is mostly federal funded, but some local funds. We will still subtract evidence-based funding. We will just base it on that local portion. Okay, so that's your personnel. And then once you have completed all of those for your instructors for the program, then we're going to go back to the program we created. We're back under program definition. This should look familiar. We just created the program a couple steps ago. In the middle of the page, you're going to see personnel. You can click add multiples, then search for the staff members that you need to add to the program. Remember, this is your second column of your list. These are your teachers and your program pairs only. Okay? If I help you with a program and I look at it and I see related service providers, I'm going to question why they're on there, okay? It's very, very difficult to prorate salaries for related service providers and put them on the program and make it correct and make it fair. So the only time that I will recommend that you use allocation ratio, I'm not going to say the only time. What is it? Never say never. But I'm not going to say the only time. But allocation ratio typically is only used if you have a pre-K teacher and you have made a program and it is a half-day program. And we would want to say, okay, so for Paloma, this is a half-day program we've made. It's an AM program. Only half of her salary should be applied. In those circumstances, you could change the allocation ratio to 0.5. All right. So what I mean by when I talk about related service providers being attached here, when you look at a related service provider and you just want to say, okay, this is, Miss Sally is our social worker and she sees 50 kids and she makes $50,000. I'm going to take $50,000 and divide it by 50. That is not accurate. Okay. Those 50 kids spend all different amounts of time with her. So it's not going to be as easy as one would think. All right, so we have created I guess this would be the first form in the key components, the P5066B. So if you're on your program definition, you scroll all the way to the bottom, you're going to see all of these forms we talked about earlier. And we have created our first report, the P5066B. This is the personnel report. There are 4 numbers on this report that will carry over to our cost sheet for us to calculate the claim. Okay. So you can look at the report if you want to. There's really nothing you need to do here, but all this data will transfer over, so you've completed one component of the claim. Next, we're going to go to the student report. How do we work on that? Well, if you're on a student claim record, you want to make sure that you have programs selected for your orphan or orphans and all of those kids on the class list for the teacher. So you're going to do this for a lot of kids. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it. You can do it record by record. So this is your claim record. What you do need to look at for your orphanage students is, first, do they have any individual costs? So do they have an individual aide or an individual nurse? Do they have some contractual costs, OT, PT? Do you have invoices for that? You want to make sure you're putting that on the individual claim record. We don't want that on the program because we don't want to share it with all the other kids. Okay, they're individual costs. So you're going to make sure you get those entered. Also, if this child has a related service of 25 and they utilized special transportation, then you're going to see a transportation cost field appear as well. The only time, again, that you will see this is if you have a related service of 25 on the approval record. So you want to make sure you get the transportation added as well. This is the only place you can put these dollar amounts. So you need to make sure you visit the claim and put these in, okay? The other way that you can add kids is actually from the program definition. So if you open up the program you created, scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see your S5066B, and you can click on add multiples, and then you can see that you can search for these kids. If you want to add more than one at a time, you just check the boxes and hit use selected. If you want to add one at a time, you use the check mark. Either way. So this could be a faster option for you if you don't already have the kids in the program. But once you get done adding these kids in, you're going to have your S5066B. This is where you want to make sure that you recalculate the days. So once you get everybody added, come and hit the recalc days button, okay? We want to make sure that when you look down through this report or through the grid that you're seeing days enrolled and days in session. If you look at this and you see 0 days enrolled, come hit the recalc days button. That means that we just need it to recalc and recognize that we've added those kids with days. Okay, so we have our second component, the S5066B. It calculated the most important number of the entire cost sheet. It's going to be line 1, and it's our special ed ADE. So this number is going to be used throughout the entire cost sheet once we get started on the 5066A. So what do you need? Well, we're ready to start on the 5066A. We have completed the 2 components, previous student and personnel report. And now we need to basically do a big scavenger hunt to fill out this 5066A. So you're going to need to locate your previous year's annual financial report. I'll show you how to do that today. I will also tell you there are instructions for this under Hot Topics on our website. So I'm undoubtedly going to go too fast for you through this. So those instructions again are under Hot Topics. We're going to need our per cap spreadsheet. We don't have that yet. We're going to get through it today without it. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have it. Then we're going to need any documentation on any items that you purchased for this program that would probably like not be listed under, you know, your AFR expenditures or things like that. So if you say it's a life skills program and maybe you had to buy laundry detergent and dish soap and things like that, if you have all of the receipts and things for that, then gather those up and make sure that you have them, okay? So we can put that in on top of the program cost as well. So when you're ready to get started, you're going to hit add. If you already have a worksheet here in the grid, just hit the pencil for edit, okay? So in the beginning, the top is going to be super easy because you're just going to be hitting reload. All of the data at the top autofills from your program definition, and then you're going to hit reload for line 1. That's going to come from the S5066B automatically. Line 2, if you want to go down and go ahead and reload 5, it will tell you what you need for 2. The reason we don't autofill this is because some of our districts do quarterly billing or monthly billings, different things like that. So these days don't always need to be the max for them. So at the end of the year where we're at now, yes, 2 and 5 will match. Line 3, 4, and 6 all need a reload. But right now, because we don't have the per cap worksheet, you're not going to see data. So if you wait till tomorrow or after, then you're going to have data populate. Line 3 is your December 1 child count. That should look familiar to you. Line 4 is going to be your total enrollment for the whole district, which comes from SIS. Line 6 will be your per cap. Okay, so all of these are pretty easy once we get that per cap worksheet, which I hope will be tomorrow. Next, this is the part that everyone has a fear of, a dread for. Just no one really likes this part, but I'm going to try to make it as easy as I can. So what we're looking at right now are expenditures that we get from our annual financial report. We're going to take dollar amounts from that spreadsheet and we're going to transfer them over here. We have a couple rules on what numbers you're able to use during this process. So I'm going to try to be as specific as I can. I'll do a couple of examples with you. We're not going to do the whole worksheet. Okay. First thing you need to do here is hit reload amounts. Line 7 is going to be the salary total from your P5066B. So that will be the totals of the teachers and the paras that you attached. Even if you put in some of it was paid local, some of it was paid federal, etc., we're taking the total right here. You'll see where we take off the receipts at the bottom. All right. So reload amounts first. Next, I'm going to then get out of this. Now, what I want you to do is kind of look at this and then just watch my screen at the same time. So I'm going to go to ISBE's website because I need the AFR. Okay. So from ISBE's website, I'm sure there are much better ways to do this, but I come in their search and I type in AFR. It's always the first result. And I scroll to the bottom. And again, we have instructions on our website for this because I know I'm going to go too fast. So we scroll to the bottom and we're going to scroll again. And I'm looking for annual financial reports. I want fiscal year 23 because we use the previous year AFR for this. So I'm going to click on this FTP server. We type in the username. It's FINREAD, no password, and hit sign in. And then here we have AFR. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. I want fiscal year 23. I want school districts. And I want Harrisburg's. So I'm going to type in my filter, Harrisburg. All right. So here's my Excel document. I run Chrome, so it's going to come up here. Okay, and once it opens, we have to hit enable editing up here at the top. And then at the bottom, I'm going to open up the expenditures 16-24 tab. All right. This is opened far away from where we need to be. So I'm going to scroll all the way to the top. Go down to line 38. This is where we will get started. All right. So when you're looking at this, you see a ton of numbers. I realize some people hate this. It's, you know, it's a scary thing to some, but we're going to get through it. Make it a little bit smaller just so we can see all the columns, because the first thing that we are going to be looking at is our function numbers down here in our second column. And if you look at your slide with the expenditures, you're going to see different headings, so different services, and beside them you'll see function numbers as well. So the first thing that will stick out to you is that there's a 2112 and a 2113 on that worksheet, right? Well, almost every AFR that I look at doesn't have a 2112 and 13. They combine those into a 2110. So right off the bat, we've got something to throw us. So what do? 2110 is acceptable. It is in our instructions, our from ISB that you can use a 2110 in lieu of 2112 and 13. So what we will do for 2110 is look down at the bottom on line 24, and you will use an other option there. So you would hit check the box that says add other. It's going to ask you what's the expenditure number, what is the function number. So you type in 2110, and then it's going to ask you the dollar amount. So how do we determine the dollar amount? Look at all these dollar amounts. All right, so just to scroll up just a little bit and show you the names of these columns. So this column is 100, 200, 400, 600. You can always use the dollar amounts in those columns. You can add them together and use those dollar amounts. So you can never use 500, 700, or 800. You can't ever use those. So if there are dollar amounts in there, you have to take them out. Okay? And sometimes you can use purchase services, object 300. Okay? So a lot of instructions. So how do we keep it all straight? Well, some of you may have already asked for one of these. You may have your instructions with you. You may have, you know, on the slide there are instructions. However you want to try to keep track of this. If you want a flip book, we asked in our news briefing, and a lot of people have already requested them, but I've been using this because even I can't remember all this from year to year. So what you need to know is that if you have one of these already on your green sheet, it's going to show you. If you don't, you can look in the instructions, the ISB instructions. Regardless, it'll tell you. Object 300, so purchase services, is only going to be allowed for certain expenditures here. And guess what? 2110 is not one of them. So right off the bat, I'm going to go back down here to 2110. We know that we have a 100, 200, and a 300. So what do we do here? We're going to add up the 100 and the 200. We cannot use the 300. Okay? So we've clicked add other. We've typed in our function 2110. You're going to have to select regular ed, and you're going to type in the total of these two numbers. All right? Another way you can do it, you can take the grand total and subtract purchase services. Either way. So take that and subtract this column 300. So either way, but we cannot, for this expenditure, use purchase services. So these two numbers added together, 100 and 200, will be the number that you plug in on the other function. All right, let's jump down. We'll do a little bit easier one. Guidance services. This is straightforward. So 2120, let's go back up. We're looking in your worksheet, 2120. Column 100 and 200. We can always use those, right? So we're just you can take the yellow total down there for this one if you want to. But basically you're adding these two numbers together. And then you have to decide, well, there are two columns. There's a special ed column and there's a regular ed column. Which one do I put guidance services in? So another special note that you will find in the instructions, you will find it at the bottom of your slide. You will find it in this flip book on the green page. Special lines. So the special lines are the special ed column. The only time you can put your dollar amounts under the first column for special ed is on lines 9, 12, 13, and 18. Okay? 9, 12, 13, 18. The rest of these numbers have to go in the second column for regular ed. So for guidance services, you're going to take your total, you're going to put it in the second column. All right. We're going to continue doing that until you get to the bottom of the worksheet, for the expenditure section anyway. So what do you do if you come through here and you find a 0? Then it's 0, okay? Every function may not have an expenditure for it. We know that. They're not all going to be filled out every single time, okay? You will eventually get down to where you're on line 25, 26 for operation and maintenance. And you will look at that and see that it's a 2540. And I just want to show you real quick. I'm going to do a control F as in Frank in this worksheet. I'm going to find, and I'm going to type in 2540. And so I just want you to see that there are multiple areas for operation and maintenance. Okay. So we found it here on line 63. I'm going to go look. My book says here that for operation and maintenance, I can include purchase services. But if you look down through here, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a 5. We cannot use capital outlay. We can't use 5. So we have to take that dollar amount out. Okay, so we're going to add up these first 4 and then write that number down. And then we're going to hit find next. And look, we found more. So we're going to look through here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have to take out 5. We can add in 6. Okay, so you can take column 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, add those together, jot that number down. We're going to find another one. This is only object 200, jot that number down. We're going to find another one. What do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, small number, but add it in. It's in column 400, jot that down. Okay. And 1, 2, 3, we can use that number. Okay. All right. So we're going to jot that down. We should be back to where we started. Yep, line 63. You've jotted down some numbers, add those all together. That's going to be your operation and maintenance amount. It's going to be a substantial number. But make sure you don't just stop at the first one you find for 2540. All right. If 2110 is combined with 2113, you make 2 separate other boxes, correct? Usually, you would just make one. So if you don't have 2112 or 2113, they're put together in 2110, you only do other once, just 2110. You shouldn't have both. So they're combined. They replace 2110 replaces 2112 and 2113. So you're not going to have a 2110 and a 2113. 2110 replaces those two. So it's a combination. Okay. These expenditures are for the general population. They're for all kids. Okay. This is not just limited to special ed costs for this portion of the worksheet. We're trying to get basically district operational costs, district employee costs, because these kids, we already know we've added their teachers, we've added their paras for special ed. You know, what now we're trying to grab related services for them, but there are also other parts of the district that they utilize that, you know, isn't because they're just special ed kids. And so we're going to take those into account as well. So that's kind of the purpose of going through here, is we're trying to find a total cost to educate the child from, you know, for every aspect. So that's why we use the AFR for this. So yes, at this point you are going to say, well, these are some general ed costs. Well, absolutely, because these kids all take advantage of them, whether they're general or special ed. Okay, so you'll continue down through your worksheet. You're matching up functions. You're going to look at what objects you can put into the total, and then you're going to decide, I found my total, what column do I put them in? Special ed or regular ed. So special ed only gets 9, 12, 13, and 18. All right. If you use the 2110, you have to put it under regular ed. All right. It'll ask you which button you want to choose. Okay, so are we okay with expenditures? I don't have any questions, so I'm assuming we're okay. Remember, under hot topics, you can find the instructions on how to find your AFR if somebody hasn't already given it to you. Okay, so it's kind of hard for me to, if I split the screens, you probably wouldn't be able to see anything. So, you know, basically what I was saying is, here's your special ed column, 9, 12, 13, 18, you can put here. Everything else has to go under the second column for regular ed. Your others down here at the bottom, you have to put it under regular education. All right, and then you're going to have your depreciation. So for line 25, if you have equipment that's over $5,000 and it was bought just for this program, then you need to put that under 25, and you have to use that depreciation schedule. If you bought anything for the program that was under 5,000, then you can add it on top of your instruction. But if you do that, don't hit reload anymore, okay? Because the reload will overwrite that. So just make sure that if you add something to this, that you don't overwrite it accidentally with the reload. Okay, so I mentioned the life skills program. I always have a lot of questions about, well, where do I put those kinds of things? Put them on line 7. Okay, so if you had to buy laundry detergent and all these things, you know, for the program, but it clearly didn't add up to 5,000. All right, 26 is going to be your 2540 expenditures. So we already talked about that. Where you get those, make sure that you look at all of the lines. There should be 5 lines. Add up all of those, but be sure that you only include columns 100 through 600. Line 27, you'll do a reload. This is going to come from that same spreadsheet that has the per caps. So it'll put your number of district-owned classrooms. On line 29, you're going to think back. When we made our P5066B, how many teachers did we attach to the program? In our example, we put 2. So that's what you will put in line 29. The number of teachers used in the program would be the number of teachers that are attached to the program. If you own the property where the program is located, you're going to leave the default of depreciation. If you rent, change it and put the dollar amount in. And then for line 31, anything that you bought for this program that has not been included, you can put here on line 31, but make sure that you can explain it. You have documentation in case of an audit. For your offsets, this is where you're going to see your evidence-based funding come in and any funding that you put in the salary that was not local. So remember, we can only say this program cost X amount of dollars of local funds. So if you're getting reimbursement back or part of salaries is federal, we can't include that as part of our cost. So if you hit reload, that's going to populate from the P5066B. I told you earlier we get 4 numbers from that report. Well, here are 3 of them. Line 7 was the other one. Okay. Next, you're going to hit calculate and save. It's going to take your expenditures. It's going to subtract the offsets, and then it's going to divide by line 1 to get it down to what it costs for one student to be educated in this program, 100% special ed, 1.0 ADE, so every day. Okay. So this is the maximum amount that it would cost in 1 year if the child was there full-time every day at 100% special ed, $24,833. So remember, when we started this journey, we talked about manual and calendar method. So the reason you didn't have to do program is because somebody gave you that number. We went through the program if we didn't know the number. So that's why we did this. It's because you don't know the cost. You need to know the cost. You now have determined that number. you know what to claim for your student now. So don't lose sight through all these steps and all these numbers of our goal. Why did we really do this? Well, we did it so that the claim would be filled out. So when you hit calculate and save, it'll take you back to your program definition, and right in the middle of the page, you want to hit recalc program, and that will go fill out your claim record for you. You don't have to go type anything in. Remember your individual costs, and if you had special transportation, those things will have to be filled in by you. However, the claim for tuition will be filled in automatically when you hit the recalc. And now you'll be able to look at your 5066C. So this is like your statement or your receipt of what you've done. It should be in your packet as well. Now mine's separate, but we're going to pull it up. And this will tell you what happens when you hit that recalc button and it goes to calculate your claim. So we know the number that we just found was the $24,833. That was the cost for the program for the max. Now we have Javier, who was not there 100% special ed. He's only 46% special ed. So we can see that already our cost is going to go down a little bit. So now we're at 11,423, but he spent 86% of his time with his regular ed peers. So we get to add back in a portion of the regular ed per cap, 86% of that per cap. So at a $12,139 per cap, we get to have $10,440 added back in. So now our claim is at $21,863. Okay. So next, what are we looking at? ADE, it's back. Well, the ADE, days enrolled divided by days in session, is 1.0. So we're not going to take anything off because he was there every day. Now it's going to look at his claim record. He has some individual costs. Okay. We're going to add those in. And then you're going to see that by the time we add in the costs for individual costs, his transportation, that our claim ends up being $23,231. I'm not going to walk you through every single piece of this. You can see what happens. But that is where your claim amount is calculated. That is where the number that you will see on the record is calculated. This is how we come up with that. So this is like your receipt. If you're sending bills out, the invoices look just like this. So it's, as you can tell, it's what I would call an itemized statement. It tells what happened, where it came from, all those good things. Okay. And sometimes you might receive one of these as an invoice, and truth be told, you should. But we know that's not always what happens. Okay. So you also will have your reimbursement reports. These will be archived and saved. These will not change after July 31st. You're going to go under reports, application reports. Instead of being on approvals, you change it to reimbursement claim, and you're going to be student reimbursement fund DE and F regular term. So that is going to be the report for what you're actually sending to ISB, what they're picking up. They don't see all the data we've gone through today. They just see the claim record. Okay, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for those required fields that they need to pay you. All right. Okay, so how is the transportation cost calculated? Look in the instructions manual on our website. So I said I would show a couple things, so I'm going to do that. Okay, how is transportation cost calculated? You need to come to our website. In the middle under manuals and guides, you want the students with disabilities claim and reimbursement instructions. It tells you in the instructions how to calculate transportation costs. All right, so you have old programs from years ago. In what instance would I add related service costs directly in for personnel, say for speech time? I would never add probably never, I can almost say never, would I put a speech teacher on the program? It would have to be where that speech teacher was 100% dedicated to only the kids that you're attaching. So they would only spend time in the program that you are creating. That is when related service providers would be okay in my book to be there. I have looked at some other circumstances and talked with some business managers where they've kind of talked me into it. But I'll be honest, I'm still not comfortable with it. I still don't think it's right because, like I talked about earlier, people want to say, okay, well, here's the salary and here are the kids. I'm going to take the salary divided by the kids. That's just not accurate. What's really accurate is going to be line 1 on your cost sheet. That's why we come up with line 1, because that ADE essentially represents the correct number instead of just saying 50 kids, right? Because you don't know those 50, it may be 50 kids. Is it 50 kids every day? Is it 50 kids all day? What is their percentage? How many minutes do they have? It's not 50 is not the right number. So the per kid cost would be different for everyone. And so that's why, again, I just don't like to see those on there. The other time where you could use related service providers and even maybe some of your admin, because admin's never allowed, but even some of your admin or your related service providers could be put on there if it's a special school. So if it's a public school and everyone's in the program, obviously, then all those staff can be on there because they're 100% dedicated to those special ed kids that are attached to the program. So that would be the only time where I would say put those types of people on the P5066B. So if like I said, if you're 100% confident that you're going to have this speech teacher and that every single child they see is already on the program, is in that program, great, you can add them. I'm probably still going to ask you about it, but you can add them. But other than that, it's just too difficult to make it correct. Just too much. And then also, like, sometimes I'll see social work on there, and I get even pickier with those types of people because, some of those people that you put on there, we get them from the AFR for a reason, and that's because they see regular ed kids too. So you're never going to be accurate even if you're trying to prorate and use the salary allocation, it's not going to be accurate. So that's why I'm so particular about it. We spend a lot of time in the summer going over high cost claims, and that's exactly what I see is a slew of related service providers added to the program. But then even better, I'll see them on the AFR too, from the AFR too. So they'll have them on both. So it'll be a double dip. So all kinds of things to look for, but that's my reason. Okay, so up here at the top, if you need time with me, want customized training, this is where you need to come fill out the form. Make sure you give me your address. I need your address to send out your claims packet. What was I? Accessing AFR. That's what I was looking for. So if you need instructions on how I got to the AFR, I know I went fast, but that's where you can find the instructions. I also mentioned down here at the bottom under student claims, your speech only calculations. Make sure that you're paying attention to whether you have a pre-K or a K through 12 student. It is different for each one. And then also all claims in iStar. A lot of what I talked about today, I talked about last week. So if you want to catch that, you can. As far as when this training will be available, it will probably be toward the end of the week. We had a training yesterday and we have a training today. So all of those have to be converted and then we have to add closed captioning. So it takes a minute. But we should have that toward the end of the week. If you want to check with me toward the end of the week, just shoot me an email and I will let you know. If you want to email me today and tell me, hey, will you let me know? Go ahead and do that. And I'll keep it in my inbox and I'll remind you, or I'll let you know when the link's available and send it to you. So, okay, I will take any questions that anyone has. I know I've been an hour and a half. I have honestly talked as fast as I can to try to get you out of here because I know it's a lot, but I also know you're busy time of year. So if you need us, just let us know. Oh, I have a good question about summer claims for orphans. You can go ahead and create your summer term record. That's fine. All right, and then repeat the columns we use for 2540. So for 2540 operation and maintenance, you can use purchase services. So it'll be 100, 200, 300, 400, and 600. You can never use 500, 700, or 800. So those are a never. 300's a sometimes. So if you look, you can look again in your instructions, you can look in your claims packets if you've got one, you can look in your flip book. You can look on the bottom of the slide from today. I have the notes there, and it should tell you what you need to know there. And again, before you get carried away and start these programs, make sure that you even need to be doing them. All right. Okay, I don't see any questions coming in. If you think of anything, please reach out, email us, call us. We're happy to help. Realize that we are going to start to get a little bit busy, so our turnaround time may be longer than usual, but we will get to you. So thank you guys for attending, and please remember that if you need that customized training, to let us know. See you at the next session, guys. Have a good week. Bye-bye.